The ultimatum. Admiral Helena Reeves stood at the viewport of the UES Dauntless, Earth's foremost diplomatic vessel, watching as the glittering spires of Nexus Station grew larger against the backdrop of stars. The massive space station served as the seat of the Galactic Conclave, where over 200 sentient species maintained embassies and settled interstellar disputes. Today, however, humanity was not arriving as a respected member of the galactic community, but as defendants in what amounted to a trial. "Admiral, we're receiving the approach vectors now," Lieutenant Commander Park said from his console. "The Conclave has assigned us docking bay E-17. Helena nodded, noting the subtle insult. E-17 was reserved for minor civilizations and provisional members. "Acknowledged. Take us in gently, Commander. Let's not give them any excuse to add reckless piloting to their list of grievances." As the Dauntless glided toward its assigned berth, Helena reviewed the situation one last time. 6 months ago, humanity had ended the Kraxan incursion by obliterating the invasion fleet over the Rigelian colony. The victory had been absolute. Not a single Kraxan warship had escaped. 14 billion Rigelians had been saved from certain enslavement. Yet instead of gratitude, the Conclave had responded with horror. The complete annihilation of an enemy force, even one as brutal as the Kraxan, was apparently considered excessive by galactic standards. Numerous species had filed formal protests, claiming humanity represented an unchecked threat to galactic stability. Approaching final docking sequence, Park announced, "We have an honor guard waiting to escort you to the Grand Chamber." "Honor guard or prison escort," Helena muttered, adjusting her dress uniform. The midnight blue fabric, adorned with the silver and gold insignia of the United Earth Fleet, felt unusually heavy today. "Commander Park, you have the con. Ambassador Chen and I will represent Earth at this hearing." Ambassador Mai Chen appeared at Helena's side, her expression carefully neutral. "Admiral, a word before we disembark. I just received some disturbing intelligence from our assets in the outer territories." Helena followed Chen to a private briefing room adjacent to the bridge. The ambassador activated a secure holographic display showing fragmented images of devastation. Entire settlements reduced to ash, orbital installations torn apart, and civilian ships drifting powerless in space. "What am I looking at, Ambassador?" "Attacks on 13 different worlds across the Perseus Arm, all occurring within the last solar week. The Conclave is keeping it quiet, but whatever did this bypassed advanced defense systems without triggering alarms. By the time anyone responded, it was too late." Helena studied the footage closely. "These aren't Kraxan tactics. The attack pattern is too methodical, almost surgical." "Precisely," Chen agreed. "And yet, several Conclave members are suggesting these attacks bear human signatures. The precision, the overwhelming force. Some believe we're expanding our territory while the Conclave deliberates our punishment." "That's absurd," Helena snapped. "We haven't deployed forces anywhere near the Perseus Arm. These accusations are groundless. Nevertheless, they'll influence today's proceedings." Chen's voice dropped lower. "There's something else. Our science team detected unusual energy signatures at the attack sites, nothing matching known technology. If this is a new player on the galactic stage." Their conversation was interrupted by the docking klaxon. The Dauntless had arrived at Nexus Station. "We'll continue this discussion later," Helena said, straightening her uniform. "For now, let's focus on defending humanity's right to exist in this galaxy without having our arms tied behind our backs." The Grand Chamber of the Conclave was an architectural marvel. A vast hemisphere with tiered platforms accommodating delegates from hundreds of worlds. The chamber's apex was a crystalline dome that revealed the spiral arm of the galaxy, a constant reminder of what bound these diverse species together. Helena and Chen were escorted to the central platform, where they found themselves surrounded on all sides by the representatives of 200 civilizations. The acoustics of the chamber meant every whisper, every rustle of fabric, every click of disapproval from non-human vocal apparatus was audible. High Arbiter Coral of the Thessian Dominion, a being composed of shimmering azure particles contained within a humanoid force field, floated to the central podium. When Coral spoke, their voice resonated through the chamber with perfect clarity. This emergency session of the Grand Conclave is now in session. The matter before us concerns the military policies and actions of Sol system humanity. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing footage of previous human military engagements, the liberation of Proxima Centauri, the Battle of the Tannhauser Gate, and most recently, the obliteration of the Kraxan invasion fleet. Humanity's pattern of unrestricted warfare stands in violation of Conclave Resolution 3429, which establishes proportional response as the foundation of interstellar conflict resolution. Sorrel continued. The complete destruction of the Kraxan fleet represents an escalation beyond acceptable boundaries. Helena stepped forward. With respect, High Arbiter, the Kraxan gave us no choice. They refused all attempts at communication and had already demonstrated their intent to enslave the Rigelian population. We acted to protect billions of lives. By taking thousands of others, interjected Ambassador Krell of the Mithran Confederacy, a reptilian species known for their diplomatic conservatism. The Kraxan may have been aggressors, but your response eliminated any possibility of surrender or rehabilitation. The Kraxan don't surrender, Helena countered, her voice firm but controlled. Their military doctrine explicitly forbids it. They would have fought to the last ship, causing maximum civilian casualties in the process. We prevented that outcome. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some supportive, others clearly hostile. The delegation from Rigel VI, their iridescent scales glinting under the chamber lights, raised their appendages in a gesture of agreement with Helena. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. Esteemed members of the Conclave, humanity understands the concerns raised here today. We value peace above all, but we cannot adopt military restrictions that prevent us from defending ourselves or our allies effectively. High Arbiter Sorrel's energy form pulsed slightly, indicating consideration. The Conclave recognizes humanity's right to self-defense. However, the manner and extent of that defense must conform to galactic norms. We propose the following restrictions. A new hologram appeared, displaying a list of proposed limitations on human military capabilities, restrictions on fleet size, prohibitions against certain weapons technologies, mandatory conclave oversight of military operations, and scheduled inspections of Earth's defense installations. Helena felt her jaw clench. These weren't reasonable precautions. They were handcuffs that would render humanity vulnerable to any species that chose not to abide by such restrictions. Before she could formulate a diplomatic response, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The crystalline dome darkened as emergency protocols engaged, and panicked voices filled the chamber. "We have an urgent situation," announced High Arbiter Coral, their voice cutting through the chaos. "We've just received word that the Tholian homeworld is under attack. Similar reports are coming in from 6 other systems." The central holographic display shifted to real-time footage from Tholia Prime. Helena watched in stunned silence as massive obsidian vessels of unknown configuration systematically destroyed Tholian orbital defenses. The attacking ships moved with uncanny coordination, their weapons cutting through supposedly impenetrable shields as if they weren't there. "This is happening now?" Helena asked, her military mind already analyzing the tactical situation. "Yes," confirmed Coral, "and the pattern matches the 13 previous attacks in the Perseus arm." Ambassador Krell turned to face Helena, accusation written across his reptilian features. "Is this humanity's answer to our proposed restrictions? A show of force to demonstrate what happens to those who would constrain you?" "Don't be absurd," Helena snapped, her patience finally breaking. "Those aren't human ships. Nothing in our arsenal moves like that or carries those energy signatures." The chamber erupted in argument, accusations flying between delegations. Some pointed fingers at humanity, others at rival factions, while fear spread visibly across the faces and postures of many representatives. High Arbiter Chloral raised their energy form, commanding silence. We have no evidence of human involvement in these attacks. In fact, preliminary analysis suggests technology far beyond current human capabilities, or any known species, added a quantum observer, their multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly as they processed the data streams. Helena stepped forward, her voice cutting through the renewed murmurs. High Arbiter, members of the Conclave, this is not the time for accusations. Whatever is attacking Conclave worlds represents a threat to all of us. I propose we temporarily table the discussion of human military restrictions and focus on an immediate response to these attacks. Many delegates nodded in agreement, fear temporarily overriding their concerns about human military doctrine. Even Ambassador Krell seemed to reconsider his position as the footage showed Tholian cities burning. "The human admiral speaks wisely," announced the Regellian Prime Speaker, their voice melodious despite the gravity of the situation. "We survived the Kraxen because of humanity's willingness to act decisively. Perhaps we now face a threat that requires similar resolve." High Arbiter Chloral's energy form pulsed in what Helena had learned to recognize as their equivalent of a solemn nod. "The hearing regarding human military restrictions is suspended until further notice. Admiral Reeves, the Conclave would value Earth's insight on these attacks." As representatives hurried to contact their homeworlds, Helena and Chen retreated to a side chamber to confer. The holographic displays continued to show the systematic destruction of Tholian defenses. "This changes everything," Chen said quietly. "The timing is almost too perfect." Helena watched the unknown ships moving with precision through Tholian defenses. Maybe the galaxy just got a stark reminder of why some species need to maintain the capacity for absolute warfare. "You think the Conclave will reconsider their position on human military doctrine?" Helena's expression darkened as she studied the unknown vessels, noting their efficiency, their ruthlessness, their complete disregard for Conclave conventions of warfare. "I think they're about to learn why they should be grateful we're on their side." The Shadow War. The emergency session of the Galactic Conclave had stretched into its third day. What had begun as a tribunal to curb human military power had transformed into a crisis management center as reports of attacks continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The glittering diplomatic halls of Nexus Station now resembled a war room, with haggard representatives huddled around strategic displays and communication arrays. Admiral Helena Reeves stood before the central holographic projection, studying the pattern of attacks. 27 worlds had now been struck, all with the same devastating efficiency. The unknown vessels, now officially designated as void constructs, due to their ability to appear without warning, had destroyed orbital defenses, neutralized planetary shields, and then departed, leaving devastated populations to fend for themselves against subsequent environmental collapse. The attack pattern makes no strategic sense from a conquest or resource acquisition perspective, Helena observed, addressing the hastily formed Crisis Response Committee. "They're not holding territory or extracting resources. It's almost as if." "As if what, Admiral?" asked Sindel, the insectoid representative from the Vespid cluster, their compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. "As if they're testing defenses," Helena finished, "probing for weaknesses, analyzing response times, and gathering combat data." The committee members exchanged troubled glances. The quantum observer who had spoken during the initial attack stepped forward, their crystalline exoskeleton catching the light. "Our analysis supports Admiral Reeves' assessment. Each attack has targeted progressively more sophisticated defense systems. The void constructs appear to be learning, adapting their tactics after each engagement." High Arbiter Chloral, who had remained largely silent during the strategic discussions, finally spoke. "If these attacks are merely tests, then what are they preparing for?" The question hung in the air, unanswered but understood by all present. Whatever force commanded the void constructs was methodically preparing for something much larger. Ambassador Chen, who had been coordinating with Earth's government, joined the group. "We've received authorization from the United Earth Council. Our 7th Fleet is prepared to deploy to the Arcturus sector to intercept the void constructs should they appear there again. A single human fleet against these things? Ambassador Krell scoffed, though Helena noted his usual confidence had been shaken by recent events. The combined forces of 3 Conclave members couldn't even slow them down at Folia Prime. With respect, Ambassador, Helena replied, keeping her tone neutral. Human combat doctrine differs significantly from Conclave standard practices. We may be able to offer some insights. Before Krell could respond, a communications officer burst into the chamber, their normally composed features twisted with urgency. High Arbiter, we're receiving a direct transmission. It's claiming to be from the void constructs themselves. The chamber fell silent as the holographic display shifted. The image that formed sent a chill through everyone present, a being composed of what appeared to be living shadow, with luminous points where eyes might be on a more conventional life form. Sentience of the Galactic Assembly, the figure spoke, its voice somehow both devoid of emotion and deeply unsettling. We are the Void Collective. Your civilizations have been evaluated and found wanting. Your technological achievements are impressive but misapplied. Your species compete when you should unify. You debate when you should act. These flaws make you unfit stewards of this galaxy's resources. High Arbiter Coral moved forward. I am High Arbiter Coral of the Galactic Conclave. We represent over 200 peaceful civilizations. Whatever grievances you believe you have. We have no grievances, the shadowy figure interrupted. Merely observations and conclusions. This galaxy requires optimization. Your removal is the logical first step. Helena felt her blood run cold at the clinical detachment in the entity's voice. This wasn't conquest or even hatred. It was extermination as a matter of efficiency. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. As representatives of humanity, we request dialogue. Surely there's a solution that doesn't require conflict. The luminous points that served as the entity's eyes seemed to focus on Chen. Humanity. Yes, your species presents anomalous readings. Unlike the others, you understand decisive action. Your military doctrine prioritizes effectiveness over protocol. This is noteworthy. If you've studied us, Helena said, stepping beside Chen, then you know humans don't surrender easily. Whatever you're planning, we will resist. Your resistance has been calculated, the entity replied without hesitation. It will be insufficient, but educational. We estimate your species will persist 27% longer than the galactic average. This variance is significant enough to warrant special observation during the optimization process. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. It was Ambassador Krell who spoke first, his voice lacking its usual pomposity. They just pronounced a death sentence on the entire galaxy, as casually as discussing the weather. High Arbiter Coral turned to Helena. Admiral Reeves, humanity has faced existential threats before. Your perspective would be valuable. Helena felt the weight of 200 civilizations looking to her for answers. The irony wasn't lost on her. Just days ago, these same representatives had been debating restrictions on human military power. Now they awaited her military assessment with desperate hope. The Void Collective believes they've calculated every variable. Helena began, her mind racing through possibilities. But their assessment of humanity as anomalous suggests they recognize we don't always behave as predicted. That's our advantage. A small advantage against an overwhelming force, remarked Sindel. Sometimes that's all you need. Helena countered. I propose a 3-phase response. First, immediate evacuation of vulnerable border worlds to more defensible core systems. Second, pooling of military intelligence across all conclave species to identify any potential weaknesses in the void constructs. And third, she paused, knowing her next words would challenge centuries of conclave doctrine. Third, prompted Coral. Third, the formation of a unified defense force with humanity providing tactical leadership. No restrictions, no oversight committees, no proportional response limitations. If we're going to survive this, we need to fight without constraints. The chamber erupted in voices, some supportive, others outraged. Ambassador Krell pushed to the forefront. This is precisely what we feared. You're using this crisis to seize military control of the Conclave. No, Helena shot back, patience wearing thin. I'm offering to help save your world, Ambassador. The same offer extends to everyone in this chamber. But we can't fight with one arm tied behind our backs, because you fear our methods. The argument might have escalated further, but alarms blared throughout Nexus Station. The station's automated defense systems had activated, and external cameras showed a horrifying sight, a massive void construct materializing less than 10,000 kilometers from the station. Evacuation protocols activated, announced the station's eye. All diplomatic personnel proceed to emergency shuttles. It's too late for evacuation, Helena said, assessing the tactical display. That construct will disable this station before the first shuttle clears the launch bay. High Arbiter Coral made a gesture that silenced the panicked voices. What do you propose, Admiral? Helena turned to her communications officer. Contact the Dauntless. Initiate Protocol Omega. The young officer paled slightly but nodded, relaying the command. Moments later, the UES Dauntless, which had been docked peacefully at Nexus Station, transformed. Armored plates shifted, revealing weapon systems that had been concealed beneath diplomatic markings. Energy signatures surged as systems previously kept dormant came online. You concealed weapons on a diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Krull sputtered, outraged despite the imminent danger. I came prepared for any scenario, Helena replied without apology. And right now that preparation is the only thing standing between you and oblivion, Ambassador. The Dauntless detached from its berth, engines flaring as it moved to intercept the approaching void construct. Helena watched the tactical display, her expression grim but determined. The Dauntless can't possibly defeat that thing, Sindel observed, mandibles clicking anxiously. It doesn't need to win, Helena explained. It just needs to buy us time. She turned to the communications officer. Open a channel to all military vessels within range of Nexus Station. Authorization code Reeves Alpha 7 Zulu. As the Dauntless engaged the much larger void construct, Helena addressed the gathered representatives. I need your decision now. Do we fight together, humanity's way, or do we continue to debate while worlds burn? High Arbiter Sorrel's energy form pulsed rapidly, a sign of intense deliberation. Finally, they spoke, voice resonating with formal authority. By emergency powers vested in the Office of High Arbiter, I hereby authorize the formation of a Joint Defense Initiative under Human Tactical Command, effective immediately and lasting until the Void Collective threat is neutralized. Ambassador Krill and several others began to protest, but Sorrel continued. The vote may be ratified later, if we survive to hold one. Admiral Reeves, the Conclave places its trust in humanity's hands. Do not make us regret this decision. Outside, the Dauntless executed a series of evasive maneuvers that should have been impossible for a vessel its size, weaving through the void construct's energy beams while landing precision strikes against what appeared to be sensor nodes. The human vessel was outnumbered and outgunned, but it fought with an unpredictability that momentarily confused the larger vessel's targeting systems. Your ship fights well, observed the Keldarian commander, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with what Helena recognized as admiration. Commander Park is one of our best, Helena replied, even as she noticed the Dauntless taking heavy damage to its port side. But they won't last much longer without support. As if on cue, spatial distortions appeared around Nexus Station as vessels from a dozen different species dropped out of FTL travel. Theshan cruisers, Vespid strike craft, even a massive Mithran dreadnought. Ambassador Krell had apparently called for reinforcements from his own people, despite his objections to human leadership. Approaching vessels, this is Admiral Helena Reeves of Earth, Helena announced over the Joint Command Channel. As authorized by High Arbiter Coral, I am assuming tactical command of all forces defending Nexus Station. Acknowledge and await combat coordination." One by one, the ships responded, some with reluctance, others with relief at having clear leadership. Helena wasted no time organizing them into battle groups, assigning roles based on each vessel's capabilities rather than their species' traditional combat doctrines. "Theshian cruisers, focus your phase disruptors on these coordinates," she ordered, highlighting specific points on the Void construct. "Vespid strike craft, execute attack pattern Echo 7 in these vectors. Mithrin dreadnought, prepare main cannon for my mark." The gathered representatives watched in astonishment as their military forces, accustomed to operating independently, began moving with coordinated precision under Helena's command. The Void construct, which had been steadily advancing toward Nexus Station, suddenly found itself engaged from multiple vectors, its superior firepower divided among too many targets. "The Dauntless has identified a potential weakness," Helena announced, highlighting a section of the Void construct on the tactical display. "All vessels concentrate fire on these coordinates on my mark." The combined fleet responded with synchronized precision. When Helena gave the command, dozens of weapon systems from a dozen different species converged on a single point of the Void construct. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a cascading failure spread across the construct's surface, its obsidian hull fracturing as energy surged uncontrollably through its systems. "All vessels, clear the blast radius," Helena ordered, watching as the Void construct's internal systems began to collapse. The Dauntless, despite heavy damage, executed a final high-energy turn to escape the impending detonation. The Void construct imploded with a flash of energy that temporarily overloaded Nexus Station's sensors. When the displays cleared, fragments of the once mighty vessel drifted harmlessly in space, while the combined defensive fleet regrouped at a safe distance. A cheer went up from many of the gathered representatives, but Helena's expression remained solemn. "Don't celebrate yet," she cautioned. "This was one vessel. According to our intelligence, the Void Collective has hundreds, possibly thousands more." The sobering assessment quieted the chamber. High Arbiter Chloral approached Helena, their energy form stable but subdued. "You've given us hope, Admiral. For the first time since these attacks began, you've shown that the Void Collective can be defeated." "Not defeated," Helena corrected. "Delayed. We destroyed one ship through surprise and coordination, advantages we won't have again. The Collective will adapt, just as they've adapted to every defense they've encountered so far." "Then what do you suggest?" asked Ambassador Chen. Helena's gaze returned to the tactical display, where the damaged but triumphant Dauntless was limping back to Nexus Station. "We need to take the fight to them, find their origin point, their command structure, their vulnerabilities. And to do that, we need to stop thinking like the Conclave and start thinking like humans." Ambassador Krell, who had watched the battle with growing respect, finally spoke. Perhaps that is precisely what the galaxy needs right now." Helena nodded, acknowledging the concession. "Prepare your forces, all of you. The real war is just beginning." Operation Firestorm. The command center aboard the UES Thermopylae hummed with activity as officers from 24 species coordinated the largest joint military operation in galactic history. 3 months had passed since the attack on Nexus Station, 3 months of desperate defense, strategic retreats, and careful study of the enemy. Now, finally, the combined forces of the Galactic Conclave were ready to strike back. Admiral Helena Reeves stood at the central holographic table, surrounded by alien commanders who had once regarded human military doctrine with suspicion, but now listened intently to her every word. The display showed the Cygnus Void, a region of space where traditional navigation systems failed and FTL travel was considered impossible, the perfect hiding place for the Void Collective's staging area. The intelligence provided by quantum deep space sensors confirms 27 Void constructs in this sector, Helena explained, highlighting the vessels on the display. "They appear to be gathering for another coordinated strike, likely against the Arcturus defensive line. Commander Thrix of the Vespid Armada, whose swarm ships had proven surprisingly effective against void construct sensor arrays, buzzed softly. The region's gravimetric distortions will render our standard FTL approaches impossible. How do we engage an enemy we cannot reach? Helena allowed herself a small smile. That's where human ingenuity comes in. We don't try to navigate the distortions, we use them. With a gesture, she expanded the tactical display to reveal hundreds of small objects positioned around the perimeter of the Cygnus void. These are modified FTL drives, stripped down, overcharged, and programmed to execute a single jump sequence before detonating. When triggered, they'll create a cascading distortion wave that will temporarily stabilize a corridor through the void. Fascinating, remarked Xorla, the Theshian science officer. But the energy requirements for such an operation must be enormous. They are, confirmed Captain Miguel Rodriguez, Helena's second-in-command. We've repurposed the output from 3 stellar tap stations to power the array. It's a one-shot opportunity. Once the corridor forms, we'll have approximately 17 minutes before it collapses. Admiral Krell of the Mithran fleet, who had reluctantly become one of Helena's strongest supporters after witnessing human tactics firsthand, leaned forward with concern etched on his reptilian features. 17 minutes to move our entire fleet through the corridor, engage a numerically superior force, and either achieve victory or retreat. The timeframe seems optimistic. It would be suicide for a conventional assault, Helena agreed. That's why we're not conducting one. Operation Firestorm isn't about overwhelming force, it's about surgical precision. She adjusted the holographic display again, revealing a small flotilla of specialized vessels bearing the insignia of Earth's Special Operations Command. Alongside them were ships from various conclave species, each selected for specific capabilities rather than raw firepower. Strike Team Alpha will proceed through the corridor first, led by the UES Shadowhawk, Helena continued. Their objective is to identify and neutralize the Void Collective's command and control structure. Meanwhile, strike teams Beta through Epsilon will target the construct's power distribution networks, which our analysis suggests are their primary vulnerability. Commander Thrix's antennae twitched with concern. And if the intelligence is wrong, if there is no centralized command structure, then we fall back to contingency protocols, Helena answered without hesitation. The remainder of the fleet will hold position at the corridor entrance, ready to provide covering fire for extraction or to exploit any advantage we create. Every ship commander has been given autonomy to adapt to changing circumstances, something the Void Collective has consistently failed to anticipate in our previous engagements. The gathered commanders nodded in understanding. Over the past months, they had learned that humanity's greatest military strength wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force. It was adaptability, the willingness to abandon failing strategies and improvise new ones even in the midst of battle. There's one more element to this operation, Helena added, her expression growing more serious. Something we haven't discussed with the full conclave. The holographic display shifted again, revealing a massive cylindrical device being fitted into the specially modified hull of the UVS Prometheus, one of Earth's newest warships. This is NOVA, Helena explained. Neutron Oscillation Vortex Accelerator. If our primary objectives fail, if the strike teams cannot neutralize the Void Collective's command structure, the Prometheus will deploy NOVA at the heart of the Void Construct's formation. Silence fell over the command center as the implications became clear. Even species with radically different psychologies and cultural norms recognized a doomsday weapon when they saw one. The yield, Captain Rodriguez continued where Helena had left off, is sufficient to create a temporary artificial singularity. It would destroy everything within a 3 light-minute radius, including our own forces if they haven't extracted in time. Admiral Krell's scales darkened in what Helena had come to recognize as the Mithran equivalent of pallor. The Conclave has prohibited such weapons for 17 centuries. The use of artificial singularity technology violates at least 7 fundamental treaties. Yes, Helena acknowledged without apology. It does. That's why High Arbiter Coral has granted special dispensation for this operation only, with the understanding that all technical specifications will be destroyed following its conclusion, successful or otherwise. She looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each commander. I understand your concerns. 3 months ago, many of you wanted to restrict humanity's capacity for warfare because you feared exactly this kind of weapon. But ask yourselves, what is the alternative? The Void Collective has shown no interest in negotiation, no mercy for civilian populations, no adherence to any recognizable rules of engagement. Sorla's energy form, pulsed in what Helena had learned was a signal of reluctant agreement. The Admiral speaks truth. Conventional ethics presuppose conventional enemies. The Void Collective exists outside our moral framework. They seek not conquest or resources, but our complete eradication. Precisely, Helena said. This isn't about winning a war through traditional means. It's about survival, not just of humanity, but of all sentient life in this galaxy. Slowly, the commanders signaled their assent, some with obvious reservation, others with grim determination. The plan would proceed. 12 hours later, Helena stood on the bridge of the Thermopylae, watching as the final preparations for Operation Firestorm neared completion. The fleet had assembled at the edge of the Cygnus Void. Over 300 vessels from dozens of species, the largest joint military force ever assembled. Ambassador Chen entered the bridge, having just concluded a secure transmission with Earth's government. The United Earth Council sends their regards, Admiral. President Okonkwo has authorized the use of NOVA at your discretion. Helena nodded, feeling the weight of that authorization. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The strike teams are in position, reported Lieutenant Commander Davis from the tactical station. FTL disruptors show optimal charge. We can initiate the corridor formation on your command. Helena took a deep breath, surveying the bridge crew, human and alien alike, working together with a synchronicity that would have been unimaginable just months ago. Commence Operation Firestorm, she ordered. Initiate corridor formation sequence. Throughout the fleet, commanders relayed the order to their crews. At the perimeter of the Cygnus Void, hundreds of modified FTL drives activated simultaneously, their energy signatures spiking as they executed their program jump sequences and then detonated. The resulting gravitational cascade tore through the fabric of space-time, forcing open a navigable corridor through the previously impenetrable void. Corridor stability at 94%, announced the quantum sensor specialist. Strike Team Alpha, you are clear to proceed. The UEA's Shadowhawk and its accompanying vessels accelerated into the corridor, their stealth systems engaged. Behind them, the remaining strike teams moved into position, ready to follow once Alpha confirmed the intelligence on the Void Construct's positions. Minutes stretched into a tense silence as the bridge crew of the Thermopylae monitored the operation. Finally, the communications array lit up with an incoming transmission from the Shadowhawk. Thermopylae, this is Strike Team Alpha, came the voice of Commander Sarah Chen, the ambassador's sister and one of Earth's most decorated special operations officers. We have visual confirmation of target vessels. 27 void constructs as predicted, plus something else. Clarify, something else. Commander, Helena ordered, a sense of foreboding creeping up her spine. It appears to be a central structure, Sarah replied, her voice tight with controlled tension. Massive, at least 20 kilometers in diameter. The void constructs are arranged in a defensive formation around it. We're detecting enormous energy signatures consistent with. Admiral, I believe this is their version of a carrier or factory ship. It may be manufacturing additional constructs. Helena exchanged glances with Ambassador Chen. This changed everything. If they could destroy the source of the void constructs, rather than just their current force, they might end the war in a single stroke. Adjust targeting priorities, Helena ordered. Strike.